the comparative in this debate is not a world without technology, and we as opposition don't need to defend like the world not progressing and getting new like ideas passing or something like that. What we say is the specific decline of the power of nation state within this process was a bad thing by itself. Maybe other things were good because of globalization, but specifically the decline of nation states is the thing that we oppose. So all of the things about lifting people out of poverty specifically because India got new technology and something like that is just out of the specific comparative that we talk in this debate, because this is not a specific policy motion that is going to say. The main thing that we get from Monica by the end is the fact that companies' interests are many times good and just want to help things. We will just want to clarify. We generally think that nations' interests are good. Most nations through all of the history wanted to help most of the people that lived inside this nation. Yes, there were specific cases of corrupt nation, but especially so, like when history moved along, more and more democratic places where the people actually have power has developed, we think that those interests are good. But on the other side, the interests of companies, Amichay has already started to analyze, in most cases are not the good interests that they talk about. The main interest is not to make people more happy, but just gain more money to the specific people who control the company. Even if it comes at the expense of the workers within the company, even if it comes at the expense of the poorest people within the society around it, and the things that it takes from those society, even if it comes at the expense of the entire globe by, let's say, global warming and things like that. So I'm going to talk about two things in my speech, and most of the rebuttal will be integrated. Firstly, I'm going to talk about human rights and where do we get more of those. And secondly, I'm going to talk about sovereignty and where do we get more of these. Let's begin. Because let's begin to talk about human rights. OG says mainly that it is going to cause more wars or less wars on their side of the house because countries are more interconnected. So firstly, we don't think that specifically to be dependent on the economy of another country is something that is relevant to the debate. The fact is that many countries has traded with each other before. I needed to steal from another country. I needed to get my products from the country that is near me. And therefore we think that this codependence can happen even if not the global economy was controlled by the corporation that is controlled by today. It's especially not connected to the fact that the country controls or not controls a specific cultural identity of the people that live within the country. But secondly, we think that many of the wars that specifically we see today are created, many of the oppression that we see today is created specifically because of the power of those global companies. Because there is a direct link on the views of many people in the world between globalization and the West. And many of the hatred that is directed toward the West is directed actually to the abusive power of those global companies that destroy the countries of so many across the world. This is why so many people turn to terrorism against America or create their own terrorist organization, because the West has destroyed their ability to go forward. This is why so many dictators in like third world countries base their own regime on the fact that they are not globalized, because they oppose those specific things that have destroyed those economies so much. So we think that this is a direct thing that happens because of the way that the usual global process has destroyed these national identities. But we've told you more than that. Because we've told you firstly that the fact is that there is a system of oppression that happens to the most citizens of the world. The fact that most people are poor and condemned to be poor with no ability to progress is happening because they are stuck on a process of companies that are only abusing their most basic skill. The fact that sweatshop exists and actually condemn people to the modern part of slavery is something that not led these people to progress at all. The fact that it takes the minerals of those countries prevent those countries from progress in any way. We think that those system of operations, that's specifically because of that, people were much happier even before those companies came. Secondly, we've told you that it creates much more hatred within those own countries. Monica claims that we talk about local identities. Yes, this is true because there is no strong global identity that has replaced the national identity. What we've told you, the specific weakness of national identity is replaced by those more local things. And when those nation identities were more all-encompassing, then people were more connected and more happy because of that, and less hatred was between those groups. And it is not only in the US that we can see that people are linked to the race, hate the immigrants, hate the people with different color of the skin. And we think this by itself creates much more violence and hatred in those things. So that's on that. Let's move to the second point, but before that, I take Monica.
All of the harms of exploitation also exist in local governmental corporations. However, it's better to have a sweatshop in Bangladesh rather
when
than
a government
unemployment because they can
products the minerals of its own country, it mostly gets the taxes and gives it back to its own people. We say that when an international company does it, it gets the money to itself, out of the people, and therefore it is much worse to the poorest of those countries. Let's talk about sovereignty, because we think that sovereignty is probably one of the most important things in this debate. People were willing to die and go to wars for sovereignty itself, and for specifically like self-controlling their own nation. We think that if you would say to people, but maybe the Palestinian will have better economical life under the Israeli regime, people will laugh at you, because even being in a more better economical situation is worse to not have the ability to control over yourself. And this is specifically what we have analyzed in this motion. Because what Amichay has already analyzed for you is how the most basic and most outrageous rules of countries are now being dictated by outside forces that don't let the people have decisions on themselves. This is what we talk about when we talk about how people are working in conditions that they have not set because they have to compete in this global world and don't have any other alternatives. This is what we talk about when the damages of global warming are happening disproportionately to countries that don't have any way to defend themselves against that. It happens only because the international companies are abusing the environment of those specific countries. This is what we talk about when we say that they control the minerals and the ability of even the future citizens of their country to actually progress and get the industries of the country to control themselves. Which means that under their side of the house, there is much less ability of people to control their own life and their own means. But more than that, we've told you that people are much less connected to the country itself, which means that the bigger decisions need collective agreement to put them, like raising taxes, like giving aid to some classes of people, happens much less where people feel that they are more into their local identities and less into the national identity, which means that many of the things that people want the most, like social security, and the fact that they will get medical security if they get sick, is happening much less, where people are feeling less connected to specific the actor that can provide those things for them. These are the things that are most important to people, but the fact that people are have much less strong national identity is preventing them to happen in many of the countries today. We think that this by itself is enough for us to win this debate, because having the ability to have the choice over how your group of people wants to live its life, how your values are being presented, is the thing that people care about more than economic freedom, more than even security of their own selves, because these are the most basic things as they view them. From all of those reasons, please oppose the motion. Thank you.